The following program is a production of Truth for the World.
Ye servants of God, your Master proclaim, and publish abroad his wonderful name, the name all victorious of Jesus extol. His kingdom is glorious, he rules over all.
The rich fool and being ready. I think those are the main ideas that we're looking at this morning, and we're going to dive in by looking at the parable that Jesus gives of the rich fool in Luke chapter 12. We're going to start at verse 13 and look at it there. So let's read from Luke chapter 12, starting in verse 13. One of the company said unto him, Master, speak to my brother, that he divide the inheritance with me. And he said unto him, Man, who made me a judge or a divider over you? And he said unto them, Take heed and beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. And he spake a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do, because I have no room where to bestow my fruits? And he said, This will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself, and is not rich toward God. A man who has a lot, but yet God calls him thou fool. I think that we can see from Scripture that the rich man is called a fool, seemingly for several reasons. The first one is that he spoke about the future as if he was definitely going to have one. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry, and store up my goods for all the days that I have to come. Well, that's all based on the idea that you will have days to come. Each day that we have is a gift, and we do not know when our end will be. In James chapter 4, reading again verses 13 and 16, these verses that you probably know well. Go to now, ye that say, Today or tomorrow we will go into such a city, and continue there a year, and buy and sell, and get gain. Whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time, and then vanisheth away. For that ye ought to say, If the Lord will, we shall live, and do this or that. But now ye rejoice in your boastings, all such rejoicing is evil. James talks about the idea of saying, we're going into the city, we're going to do this, and we'll live there for a year. Well, maybe you will, and maybe you won't. Do you notice that very simple paraphrasing that James suggests? You should say, if the Lord wills, we will do this. It seems like such a minor change grammatically, but the perspective that it puts upon your life is very important. If the Lord grants me the life and the health and the ability to do it, and the time to do it, then it will be so. The rich fool did not think that way. I have this, I can do this, and I will do this. Well, as the parable went, tonight your soul will be required of you. Now what? Now what about all those plans you had? And all those things you said you were going to do. Now what? Not only did he speak about the future as if he was definitely going to have one, but his treasures were laid up on earth for himself. As a reminder, earthly treasures were not ours before we were here. They're not really ours while we're here, and they won't be ours after we're gone. If that's the case, we're really just kind of passing them around, if you want to look at it that way. I have it for a little while, and I'm a steward of it for a little while, but then I'm going to pass it off to somebody else. And somebody else had it before I got here. So really, I'm just a temporary steward of what I have. It's on loan, basically. It's on loan. But a sinner sometimes may try to heap up earthly treasures to say this is what life is all about. And the world will tell us that. This is what life is all about. Heaping up as much possessions and money and things for yourself. The wise man Solomon said in Ecclesiastes 2:26, God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he giveth travail to gather and to heap up, that he may give to him that is good before God. Those that focus their life on gathering and heaping up and building up their pile of possessions only end up leaving them for someone else to sort through. But the real question is, if that's what your life was about, why is that what your life is about? If that's what your life is about, gathering and heaping up just so you can pass it off to somebody else, was that really a good purpose in your life? Earthly treasures are temporary, as we know, for everybody. The day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. Even if you live until the end of the world, those possessions will be destroyed. You can't really take it with you. The problem with the rich fool, his treasures were laid up on the earth for himself. Instead, his treasures should have been laid up in heaven. Notice the comparison in Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 24. We just talked about earthly treasures and their temporary nature. But notice what we read in Matthew 6:19. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through and steal. Do you see the comparison here? It's all temporary, and someone else can take it from you here on earth. Even if you hold on to it, it can rust and corrupt and be worthless. Not so with the treasures in heaven. If you're storing up earthly treasures, they are temporary. Heavenly treasures are permanent. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon, or physical possessions. The rich man's treasure should have been thinking about treasures that were permanent. And his goal should not have been to heap up things on earth, but rather to lay up treasure in heaven. And of course, he should have been rich toward God. What did he build up his pile of material possessions for but himself? It was all about himself, wasn't it? Take your ease, eat, drink, be merry. Wasn't even considering others, wasn't considering God. He wasn't rich toward God. Our giving to God should be generous and sacrificial, not just whatever runs over the top. Mark chapter 12, verses 41 through 44, Jesus sat over against the treasury, and beheld how the people cast money into the treasury. Many that were rich cast in much, and there came a certain poor widow, and she threw in 2 mites, which make a farthing. And he called unto him his disciples, and saith unto them, Verily I say unto you, that this poor widow hath cast more in than all they which they have cast into the treasury. And here's his explanation why. For all they did cast in of their abundance, But she of her want did cast in all that she had, even all her living. The giving of the woman was sacrificial. You see that? Those that were rich cast in of their abundance. In other words, this is just extra. I could skim it off the top and I'd probably never even miss it. It's not even really important to me. It's like giving the crumbs. You know, I eat a sandwich and then somebody hungry comes up and says, "Can I have something to eat?" "Sure, I got some crumbs here. Have those off the plate." But the woman gave all that she had. That was a sacrifice to God. In 2 Samuel chapter 24, notice what happened to David. Araunah said, "Wherefore is my lord the king come to his servant?" David said, "To buy the threshing floor of thee, to build an altar unto the Lord, that the plague may be stayed from the people." David wanted to buy something from this man, a place, a location, so that he could build an altar to God. Araunah said unto David, "Let my lord the king take, and offer up what seemeth good unto him. Behold, here be oxen for burnt sacrifice, and threshing instruments, and other instruments of the oxen for wood." This man was more than willing to cooperate. He basically told David, "Take what you want and use it." But notice David's response. "All these things did Araunah as a king give unto the king, and Araunah said unto the king, The Lord thy God accept thee. The king," meaning David, "said unto Araunah, Nay, but I will surely buy it of thee at a price." That goes against my nature. If someone wants to give me something for free, I don't try to talk them into letting me buy it usually, but that's exactly what David did. But notice his reasoning. Notice his reasoning. "I will surely buy it of thee at a price. Neither will I offer burnt offerings unto the Lord my God of that which doth cost me nothing." What is David saying? I will not give and offer to the Lord that which does not cost me anything. That which is not sacrificial. David is about to sacrifice to God. Is he going to give him the crumbs and say, "Well, this didn't cost me anything, why don't you just take that?" Instead, he says, "I will not sacrifice to God that which cost me nothing." 2 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 7, as we go forward, says, "Every man according as he purposeth in his heart, so let him give. Not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver." The rich man was not rich toward God. Probably wasn't even rich toward anyone else. He was more concerned with what he could heap up for himself. You know, one reason we have as much as we do is to be able to help others. And that's biblical. Look at Acts chapter 2, verses 44 and 45. The example of the Christians in the first century. All that believed were together and had all things common, sold their possessions and goods and parted them to all men. How? As every man had need. When they saw people that needed, they gave to them. What did they give to them? From their own possessions and their own goods. The rich fool was a fool. He did not know, or did not act at least, as if the future was uncertain. He heaped up treasures on earth, and he heaped them up for himself and was not rich toward God, whereas his treasure should have been laid up in heaven. And next, the idea of being ready. Unlike the rich man, we need to be living right and be prepared for the end because we do not know when it will come. The rich man got a surprise and said, Tonight your soul will be required of you. I'm sure he didn't expect it. But nevertheless, it was the truth. If we think about it, I don't know when my end will be. There's two possible outcomes. Either I may die. What does James chapter 4 and verse 14 say? Whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time, and then vanisheth away. I may die. That's just the way it is. Or, even if I live, Jesus may return. And that will mark the end of the world, the end of time. Matthew chapter 24, verses 42 through 44, Jesus says, Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. I know people in the world try to predict the end of the world, but they need to go back and read this verse again. You don't know what hour the Lord may come. But know this, that if the goodman of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be ye also ready. Do you see the analogy he says? If you know when a thief's coming, you're obviously going to sit up and wait for him. I was just watching that on television recently. I was watching one of those crime programs. And these people knew that this rash of home invaders were coming to their house. And they stood up and they waited for them. And those home invaders got a nasty surprise when they tried to come into the house. Well, that's logical, right? If you know someone's going to break in your house at 2:30, you wait up till 2:30 and give them a nasty surprise. You know, the police sitting there with you waiting. Hi, come on in. We've got some handcuffs for you. But what's the analogy? What's the point of that? He says, therefore be ye also ready. You need to be ready. Why? Because in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man comes. Jesus will return in an hour that you're not expecting. Even if I live, Jesus may return. He said he would. I just don't know what day it will be. We need to be prepared and living right because we don't know when the end will come. And unlike the rich man, we need to put the spiritual things of God before the things of the world. The rich man said, these are what's important to me. This is what my life is about. And God said, thou fool. You're acting foolishly. Instead of worrying about the temporary things of this world and neglecting the things of God, we instead need to be busy focusing on the things of God and let God help us and worry about the needs of this world. We get it backwards. Notice Luke chapter 12, starting in verse 22. These are important words. Jesus said unto his disciples, therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, neither for the body, what ye shall put on. The life is more than meat, and the body is more than raiment. We get caught up in that so much, though, don't we? Got to make sure that this gets done and that gets done, but is your life more than that? Consider the ravens, for they neither sow nor reap, which neither have storehouse nor barn, and God feedeth them. How much more are ye better than the fowls? Are we not more valuable to God than the animals that God takes care of? And which of you with taking thought can add to his stature 1 cubit? If ye then be not able to do that thing which is least, why take ye thought for the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They toil not, they spin not, and yet I say unto you that Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. If then God so clothe the grass, which is today in the field, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O ye of little faith? And seek not what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, neither be ye of doubtful mind, for all these things do the nations of the world seek after. And your Father knoweth that ye have need of these things. It's not a surprise and a shock to God that you need food and clothing and raiment. He knows that. He knows the birds need food and shelter, and he takes care of them. So the question, are you not worth more to him than those? But rather seek ye the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. That's what I mean, we get it backwards. We worry so much about taking care of our needs of the world, but yet we neglect God and putting him first. God says, put me first, and I'll make sure that the other things, the needs you have, are taken care of. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell that ye have and give alms. Provide yourselves bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens. Where are you laying your treasure up? A treasure in the heavens that faileth not, where no thief approacheth, neither moth corrupteth. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Unlike the rich man, we need to put spiritual things of God before the things of the world. And we need to be ready for when the bridegroom comes. I don't think the rich man was ready for his news, because he'd made all these plans. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And his news was, tonight your soul will be required of you. We need to be ready for when the bridegroom comes. What does that mean, the bridegroom? Well, Jesus uses the wedding activities of his day as an analogy for his return. As I like to explain, in our modern days, when you go to a wedding, you usually get an invitation, and it says RSVP, Respondez s'il vous plaît, which is French. That's one of the 5 French words I know. But it basically means, would you respond and tell me if you're coming, right? RSVP. But on the invitation is very specific information. The wedding is this day, the wedding is this time, it's at this location, and there's really not much question to it. You just say, yes, I'll come, and you show up, and you eat the cake, and all is good. But that's not the way weddings were conducted in the day of Jesus. You knew there was going to be a wedding feast, but you just didn't know when it was going to be. You knew that you were going to be called and told all things are ready, come to the feast, but you just don't know when that feast is going to be. You don't know when everything's going to be ready. The bridegroom would go, and I call it a parade, would parade through the street and go to the bride's house and pick her up. And then he would take her to a place, and they would have a feast, and they would have a wedding. But as he went on this parade, he would pick up people along the way and say, all things are ready, come to the feast. And the people who were ready and prepared were saying, great, let's go. The people who weren't ready didn't get to go. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. It's time for the parade. 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps, and took no oil with them. But the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, Give us of your oil, for our lamps have gone out. But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you. But go ye rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, Verily I say unto you, I know you not. So what's that all about? Watch therefore, for ye know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh. The bridegroom is coming. You've already received the first part of the invitation. It's in the Bible. Will you come to Jesus and follow him? That's the first part. You know there's a great feast day coming where you will sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and rejoice with God, but you just don't know when the bridegroom's going to come. So you have to be ready. Otherwise, you'll be shut out and miss the whole party. Let your loins be girded about, and your lights burning. And ye yourselves like unto men that wait for their Lord when he will return from the wedding, that when he cometh and knocketh, they may open unto him immediately. Blessed are those servants whom the Lord, when he cometh, shall find watching. Verily I say unto you that he shall gird himself and make them to sit down to meat, and will come forth and serve them. And if he shall come in the second watch, or come in the third watch, and find them so, blessed are those servants. Blessed are those that are ready for the Lord's return, ready for the bridegroom to come. Jesus also uses the analogy not only of a bridegroom, but also of a thief, as we've talked about already. And this know that if the goodman of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not have suffered his house to be broken in through. Be ye therefore ready also, for the Son of Man cometh at an hour when ye think not. The rich man wasn't ready, but we have a chance to be ready. We have a chance to live our lives in a way that when the bridegroom comes, we will not be scared, but rather we will rejoice and enter into the feast that's prepared. Simply put, we need to be ready for when the bridegroom comes. We need to be busy working for when Jesus returns. In Luke chapter 12, let's read verses 41 through 48. Peter said to him, Lord, speakest thou this parable unto us, or even to all? The Lord said, Who then is that faithful and wise steward, whom his Lord shall make ruler over his household, to give them their portion of meat in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Of a truth I say unto you, that he will make him ruler over all that he hath. And if that servant say in his heart, My Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to beat the men servants and maidens, and to eat and drink, and to be drunken, the Lord of that servant will come in a day when he looketh not for him, and at an hour when he is not aware, and will cut him in sunder, and will appoint his portion with the unbelievers. And that servant which knew his Lord's will, and prepared not himself, neither did according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes. There's punishment coming for those that do not do the Lord's will or prepare for his coming. He that knew not and did commit things worthy of stripes shall be beaten with few stripes. For unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall much be required. And to whom men have committed much, of him they will ask the more. It's very simple. The rich man was considered a fool because he had built up treasure for himself on earth. He was not rich toward God, and he assumed that he had the rest of his life to eat, drink, and be merry. Why was he a fool? Because he assumed that he had the time that he expected. He was foolish because he put the things of this world first and not the eternal treasures of heaven. He was foolish because he was not rich toward God. But the point is, Jesus says, I'm coming back, and you better be ready. You know how people often say, the boss is coming, look busy? Right? Look busy, the boss is coming. Well, Jesus is returning. What will Jesus find us doing? Will he find us busy working for him in the vineyard? Will he find us a Christian, a follower of him, one of the saved added to his church? Or will he find us totally unprepared like the rich man, in shock and awe that tonight his soul is required of him, and now he will stand in judgment? If you would like a free Bible correspondence course, then write us at Truth for the World, P.O. Box 241, Bethel Springs, Tennessee, 38315, the United States of America. Or visit us online at truthfortheworld.org.